Welcome to Oak City Church, a family of learners, lovers, and givers sent. For more information, visit us online at oakcitychurch.com. Let us know if we can help you in any way. Thank you for listening.
We're reading from Mark 10, verses 32 through 45. And they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them. And they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. And taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was going to happen to him, saying, "See, we are going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes. And they will condemn him to death and deliver him over to the Gentiles. And they will mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days he will rise."
Then James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came to him. "Teacher," they said, "we want you to do for us whatever we ask." "What do you want me to do for you?" he asked. They replied, "Let one of us sit at your right and the other at your left in your glory." "You don't know what you are asking," Jesus said. "Can you drink the cup I drink, or be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with?" "We can," they answered. Jesus said to them, "You will drink the cup I drink and be baptized with the baptism I am baptized with. But to sit at my right or left is not for me to grant. These places belong to those for whom they have been prepared." When the 10 heard about this, they became indignant with James and John. Jesus called them together and said, "You know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them. Not so with you. Instead, whoever wants to become great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be slave of all. For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as ransom for many." This is the word of the Lord.
You guys can have a seat. Thanks, Josh and Lauren. Hey, why don't you, if you're going to get married in a few months, just raise your hand. That's just Josh and Lauren. That's it. It's just it. Everybody should know that, though. And so we're excited for you guys. That's coming up quick. Okay, so we are in a series in the Gospel of Mark. And so we get to this scene, and I love this scene. So I'm going to start in the middle of this passage where it says, "And James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came up to Jesus, and they said to Jesus, 'Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you.'" Whatever we tell you to do, will you do it? This is, like, for years reading this scene, I'm like, this cannot be the way that this went. Like, who would you imagine asking you something like this? Yeah, your children. And at what age could you envision your children asking you this question? All ages? 6? Right now. It happened yesterday. Yeah, I'm thinking like 4 to 6 years old, the kid will come up and say, "Hey, will you do whatever it is that I ask you to do?" No, I won't. Like, who would say yes to this? What is it that you want me to do? Well, we can't tell you that until you say that you're going to do it. Like, there's no way I'm doing that. Why would I do that? No one's possibly saying yes to this. I can't get my head around the fact that they would ask Jesus this question and that Jesus engaged it. Like, so many times I've thought, this cannot be as stupid as it sounds. But in just a minute, a few verses, you hear that the other 10 disciples are indignant that they would ask the question. So it's exactly what it looks like it is. It's exactly what we think it is. And so Jesus says, "Well, what do you want me to do for you?" He takes the bait. And they said, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left hand in your glory." So, Jesus' message is that the kingdom is here. That's the gospel. And it's here and it's coming. It's going to become real. And they're going to Jerusalem. So it seems like the time is getting short. It's imminent that something is going to change, and that James and John are like being proactive and making sure that they get the best seats for what's about to happen. Like, could be that they really do believe in him and what he's saying, but they're a little drunk with the potential of power and glory, and they don't want to miss out. You think about this scene, there's 12 disciples, and James and John are brothers, and there's 2 of them, but Jesus already has like an inside circle of 3 of them, Peter, James, and John. They go up in the Mount of Transfiguration. And so James and John, by asking for these 2 spots, the one on the right and the one on the left, which is a Jewish thing, and it's a real thing, like there's these 2 spots, are kind of freezing Peter out, Like it's a bit of a power play that they get the spots. In Matthew's recording of this story, their mom is the one that asks the question, which is beautiful, And when Gospels differ in details, I think you kind of mush them together and figure it out. So I think that their mom was actually a part of this, which makes her the original and maybe the ultimate helicopter parent, and makes the whole thing like just lamer and lamer and lamer, this scene, I wonder. And this is a real thing. Like, I wonder if Jesus, in his own internal dialogue, doesn't immediately think, I have failed here, Like, we are 2 weeks before I'm out of here, and these knuckleheads are going to be in charge of the whole thing, weeks from turning the whole project over to these guys. As a pastor over years, one of the things you pay attention to the most is, like, unity and cohesion or division. And you really, like, that's a big problem, And thankfully, over 20 years in our elders and our staff, we've always had a lot of unity and cohesion. We haven't had any, like, power struggles for anything. My one rule to our elders over the years is, and this got passed on to me from another guy when we started our elder board, he's like, no parking lot conversations. So you're not going after the meeting and standing by your car with another elder, talking about the meeting, or you're not figuring out how to politic. Like, you got something to say, you say it in the meeting, otherwise don't say it. Like, no, it's a big thing. Like, and so I wonder if Jesus is like, man, if he went out and prayed alone and said, Father, I think we need to push the timeline. Like, I thought I could get it done in 3 years, but we are not ready yet, like a road project. Or your contractor comes to you talking about your kitchen or the addition, saying, I thought it would take 6 months, but now it's going to take 5 years, and it's going to cost twice as much. Like, Jesus just thinks these guys clearly are not ready to have the baton of the gospel and the kingdom passed on to them in the next few weeks. Or maybe he thinks, I'm just going to have to start over. These are 2 of the 3 main guys. Like, none of this is going to work. And that's, to me, that's a real thing. We're a couple weeks away from Jesus, like, leaving the scene, and these are the guys that are in charge. It is a real argument for the power of the Holy Spirit at work in the early church, because it worked, but it's not because these guys were so ready. I wonder if this scene didn't come up for years afterwards. Like, every time Peter, James, and John got together in the same city and were around a fire just kicking it, if Peter wasn't like, hey, you guys remember that time where you had that power play and you tried to get the right and the left hand thing? That was fun, wasn't it? And if they weren't like, well, you remember when a few weeks later you denied even knowing Jesus? I bet he thought that was a lot of fun too. Because I feel like that's the type of thing that guys tend to do. Like, we don't let guys forget about stuff like this. I just love the dynamics within the scene. It is, at a minimum, it is a relationally completely unintelligent move, And people make those. We've all had people that sucked up to the boss, right? How many of you can think of, like, just off the top of your head, a coworker, a classmate, a teammate, or possibly a sibling that regularly sucked up to the boss, whether the boss was the boss, the boss, or a classmate, or a teammate, or possibly a sibling that was looking for power. We are an ambitious people, and that Jesus doesn't even, like, reprimand their ambition. A little bit in this scene, he's going to say, whoever would be great among you, you want to be great? That's great. Let's be great. But my idea of great and your idea of great are 2 different ideas of great. And so I love the setup in this scene. Jesus says, you don't know what you're asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink or be baptized with the baptism with which I am baptized? If you knew what you were asking, you wouldn't be asking for it. You really don't want this. Drinking the cup is like sharing an experience. In the Old Testament, the cup of wrath or the cup of blessing. And so in baptism, are you willing to go through the things that I'm going to go through? Could ask, like, could they know what he means by that? But the beginning of the scene, I started in the middle, he just told them what that means. So they absolutely should know what it means. So the beginning of this passage, they were on the road going up to Jerusalem, and Jesus was walking ahead of them, and they were amazed, and those who followed were afraid. So we're in Mark chapter 10. In the big picture of Mark, Mark chapter 8 is like the hinge of the book. Until Mark chapter 8, Jesus is teaching, he's doing all these works, he's drawing the crowds, and then at Mark chapter 8, Peter confesses him as the Christ, the Messiah. He's the one that the Jewish people have been waiting for. The disciples are all with it. And then from that point, the book turns, and Jesus starts talking about how he's going to have to suffer and what it means for him to be the Messiah. And they had been in the northern part of Israel, which is the quiet part, it's the less political part. And as soon as that happens, they start going to the south. They start going to Jerusalem. Up to Jerusalem is an elevation thing. They're in Jericho, which is like 800 feet below sea level, and Jerusalem is like Asheville. Like it's a walk. And so they're going up to Jerusalem, and that's where all the power players are who are threatened by the power that Jesus has accumulated with his ministry. And they're amazed because he is walking towards the danger. They know what it means for him at this point to go to Jerusalem, and he's walking into the lion's den. He's not walking away from it. He's walking towards it. All the tension that has built up in the gospel to this point is going to come to a head in the next few weeks, and it's a tremendous display of courage on Jesus' part. He's taken on the establishment. He's the ultimate underdog, and they're afraid because they don't have the same courage that Jesus has. And so he says to them, taking the 12 again, he began to tell them what was to happen to him. See, we're going up to Jerusalem, and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the scribes. They'll condemn him to death and deliver him to the Gentiles, and they'll mock him and spit on him and flog him and kill him. And after 3 days, he'll rise. And so this is the third time since chapter 8, the third time since that confession that he says, this is what's going to happen to me. And every time he adds some details. So this time he adds that it's the Romans, it's the Gentiles that are going to kill him, which is a particularly insulting thing for the Jewish people to do to their Messiah, is to turn him over to the Gentiles, who they hate, to do the dirty work. And they are going to mock him, they're going to spit on him, they're going to beat him, and they are going to kill him. Jesus has evaded them several times. He has talked himself out of their traps. He has slipped away from hostile crowds. The pressure has been mounting, and Jesus says, we're going to go there, and your worst fears are going to come true. That sense of impending doom that you have about what's going to happen is going to be right this time. They're going to catch me. They're going to have their way with me, and they are going to kill me. And I'm going to die. And it will look like they have won, and I have lost. And after 3 days, I'll rise again. It's somber. It is not the time to ask, hey, gotcha, will you do whatever we ask you to do? Just doesn't compute with what he said. So he says, you don't know what you're asking. They should know what they're asking. Are you able to drink the cup? And they said, we are, yeah, we're able. These guys don't get it. And I don't know what's going on in their head. If they're just drunk with ambition, or anxious about their position in the future, or codependent on their mom who is anxious about their position in the future, or super confident that this isn't going to be the end of the story, but a blip on the radar, which is at a minimum pretty unempathetic with what Jesus has just said he's going to go through. Yeah, you're going to go through that, but it's going to get better. Can we have the good spots? And Jesus says, the cup that I drink, you will drink, and the baptism with which I'm baptized, you will be baptized. And this is a little funny. But to sit at my right hand or my left is not mine to grant. It's for those to whom it's been prepared. Above my pay grade, guys. You are going to go through what I'm going to go through, but I can't give you what you want. When the 10 heard it, they began to be indignant at James and John. And Jesus called to them and said, "You know that those who are considered rulers over the Gentiles lord it over them, and their great ones exercise authority over them." And so I think this is a little bit of a gentle reprimand. He says there's a way that leadership works in the world. There's a way that people deal with power. He probably heard I think it was Edmund Burke that said, "Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." And we've all seen that. And he's just saying it's going to be different in my kingdom. How many of you would say you've experienced bad leadership at some point in your life? Yeah. I ask questions like that all the time. Rarely do I get that many hands up, like without having to think much about it. We all have. Self-serving leadership, exploitative leadership, abusive leadership, manipulative leadership. At the bottom of it is like, what can I get out of you that will benefit me? At best, we have like win-win leadership, kind of a more ethical leadership. And Jesus says, "It shall not be so among you, but whoever would be great among you must be your servant, and whoever would be first among you must be the slave of all." And so he's taken it to like a totally different place when it comes to leadership. Servant is doulos. It's like an indentured servant. If somebody got in debt, they could make themselves a slave to someone and buy their way out of it. Slave is like what we more typically think of as slave, but at the end of both of those things, there's not win-win propositions. It's I'm going to act in your best interest without consideration of my best interest. Like it's a you win, I lose thing. And he's saying that's what leadership is like. For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. So I think this is one of the ways that I think about this in terms of what he's doing with these 12, which is like the core of this early church. I heard someone say this years ago. It stuck with me in terms of like organizational leadership stuff and mission and vision and strategy and that type of thing and values. They said culture eats strategy for lunch. Culture eats strategy for lunch. You can have the best strategy, you can have all the talent you want, but like if you don't have good culture, it doesn't really matter. And so values tend to like be in the culture realm. I don't know how many of you have eaten at Prime Barbecue out in Nightdale. Like, it's been a big thing the last few years. It's awesome. Kevin Tyndall and I went there right after it opened during COVID. We happened to meet the guy that started it. He took us on a little tour. Christian guy. He's got some verses in the smoke room, and he takes us to the kitchen. Do you remember this? Yeah. You remember what his top value was?
No, I remember it was blinding all the purpose he had up there, all the competition.
Yeah, so in his kitchen, his values are like giant on the wall. And the top value at a barbecue joint is passion. And I'm like, I love that. And it kind of oozes out of them. Like they have a passion for barbecue. Chick-fil-A has culture, right? We were talking yesterday after the men's breakfast that they have changed fast food forever. It's changed our expectations. I don't even love their food. I think fried chicken is bad for you. But they have changed it so that it's good for you because Jesus likes it. I don't know. And because they're really good at what they do. And it is a culture thing. They're all the same. It's not strategy. It's culture. Has anybody been a part of an organization or a team or maybe a family that didn't have good culture? Like a lot of talent, good plan, bad culture. Has anybody been a part of that? Like you can't overcome bad culture. You just know like it's not going to work. And culture is harder to define than strategy is. And it's going to be, it's just a way of thinking about that. It's got to be radically different. And these guys are acting like everybody else. They want to use their proximity to Jesus to get power and glory. What can I get out of it for me? How does the cost benefit work in my favor? As a pastor, just the past few weeks in this story, like, it's so funny to me, and I love it, but at some point, Jesus put a mirror up in front of me and said, the people that are most likely to be like James and John are pastors. Like, who's most likely to use Jesus to get some glory for themselves? Can I be important in your kingdom? And it's us, right? We face and succumb to this temptation more than anybody. He's saying it's just the culture, it's got to be different. A little Bible geekery for a second. You see, you don't need to worry about this, but it is kind of cool. So chapter 8 is the hinge of the book of Romans, and where Peter confesses him as the Messiah, and then everything starts moving towards the cross. But right before Peter confesses Jesus as the Christ, there's a story of a blind man that gets healed, and it's the only two-part healing in the gospel. So he heals him a little bit, and then it says that he saw a man as trees walking, or something like that. Like he can kind of see, but not really. And then Jesus does another part of it, and then he can see clearly. And so this one guy said, what's happening here is that Peter's going to confess Jesus as the Christ, so he gets that he's the Messiah, but he can kind of see him, but he can't really see him. He doesn't understand what type of Messiah he is. And so 3 times he tells them, I'm a suffering Messiah. Like they just don't have a conception. Isaiah 53, but like the broader picture of it is a conquering Messiah, a political, not even a divine Messiah. So he has to he's the Messiah, but he has to reshape their idea of what a Messiah is, and he does it with these 3 times. And each time, I mentioned this, right afterwards, they say something stupid that shows that they just do not get it. And that's James and John. This is the stupidest thing. They just do not get what it means that he is going to suffer. And so he's explaining to them the type of Messiah that he's going to be. Right after, next week is another blind guy getting healed, so there's kind of bookends on it. And the Gospel of Mark starts with his baptism. This is my son with whom I'm well pleased. The gospel of Jesus Christ, the Son of God and Messiah. The middle of it is Peter confessing him as the Christ. And the end of it is chapter 15, where the centurion, the Roman, and Mark is writing to the Roman church, says, when Jesus has suffered and is dead on the cross, says, surely this was the Son of God. Like the whole thing is a lot about getting what type of Messiah this is. And that's what Jesus is trying to communicate. Like, this is just going to be a different thing than what you think that it's going to be, you know? And if you want to be great in the kingdom, you got to stop asking what you get out of everything. So I read this quote in a commentary, and rarely does a quote in a commentary strike me like this. But I just felt like this guy, the more I thought about it, just got right at it. He says, the basic trouble in the human situation is that men wish to do as little as possible and to get as much as possible. The basic trouble in the human situation is that men, I'm going to put women and children in there, it's all of us, right? We wish to do as little as possible and to get as much as possible. What's wrong with that? Like, exactly. This is culture. This is the culture probably everybody lives in, but this is where we live, and this is really it. A couple weeks ago, Lisa Quinn mentioned she read a book called Dopamine Nation. So she's like, you got to read this. So I got about halfway through listening to it, and I'd rented it from the library, and it expired. So now I got to wait for the rest of it. But it's like, we are just jacked up on, dopamine is like the pleasure. We're addicted to getting more of it and more of it and more of it. And so we'll just do the thing because it's so easy to get it. Like, you look at this first thing in the morning because something fun might be going on in there. I listened to a podcast this past week. I can't remember what it was, but they were talking about just like an age of abundance where we have so much access to so many sources of things that look like they're going to make us, happy. And our biggest challenge is going to be figuring out how to deal with that type of abundance. We want to maximize our return on investment at all times. Everything is an equation. And so if we don't get out of something more than we put into it, we wonder why we're doing it. Whether that be our money or our time or our emotional energy, whatever it is, we're always running an equation. How many of you know the end of this sentence? The eighth wonder of the world is compounding interest. Warren Buffett. You think about that for a second, you're like, he's right. It is free money. It is like magic. It's like winning the lottery. Put some money there, compounding interest, it's going to be more money in a little while. Like, that's maximum return. Minimum effort. How many of you have sources of passive income? How many articles do you read about? Here's the 10 ways to get easiest sources of passive income. Like, this is our dream. We don't use the term FOMO as much as we did, say, 10 years ago, the fear of missing out. But man, it's still a very real thing. And don't lie to me, because I'm your pastor, and so I know that you guys sign up for things that we need you to sign up for at the very last second. Because you are running an equation, and I am running an equation that says maybe if I wait, something will come along that will give me a better return on the investment of my time and effort that they are asking me for, right? You do this. Maybe, someone invited us over for dinner, but maybe someone else will invite us over for dinner that will be a better return on our investment of time than spending time with them at their house. We do it all the time. How many of you have been in a conversation with someone across the table and your phone is in your pocket and they're just kind of going on and you kind of get itchy, like, well, maybe something's going on that would be better than what they're talking about. Or listen to a pastor drone on and thought, if I could just pull my phone out right now and find out what's going on in the world. Like, we're always asking it, is this the best use of my time, of my money, of my energy? And even asking, like, how would Jesus have me use my time, my money, my energy is a good question, but we tend to run it through the equation of, like, what's the return? Surely Jesus is going to give me a better return because he's Jesus. But we still run it through the equation. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, I think, that there was, during the Gather 25 thing a year ago, there's a pastor named Francis Chan, who's one of my favorite pastors, and they showed this, 8-minute clip. It was kind of out of context, but it was, I really appreciated it. He's had a huge church, written a lot of books, and he said he got to a place where he found himself just wanting more people, more attendance, more people at the bigger venues that he was speaking at conferences, because more people buying his books, because more meant he was more successful. And he found himself pretending to be on the phone as he was walking out of a room with a lot of people, so he didn't actually have to talk to people. And he remembered that his youth pastor said when he'd first come to know the Lord, that one of the things his youth pastors trained him with is, you go into a room, you find the person that needs the most love, and you spend your time with that person, which is saying, run the equation in the opposite. You find the place where you'll be put in, you'll give the maximum, but you'll probably get out the minimum. And that's where you're supposed to be. And he realized he had it all backwards, and leftist just quit, just went on a journey to figure out what it was that God wanted him to do. The basic trouble in the human situation is that men wish to do as little as possible and to get as much as possible. Now, to be clear, this isn't all bad. This spurs a lot of innovation. Passive income is a great thing. Go ahead and get it. But in a spiritual sense, in a relational sense, in an emotional sense, it's really bad to live our lives this way. This guy goes on, it's only when they are filled with the desire to put into life more than they take out that life for themselves and for others will be happy and prosperous. Only when they're filled with the desire to put into it more than they take out that life for themselves and for others will be happy and prosperous. Really, this is the only thing I want to communicate today. If you can engage that tension and ask what it means for you and to what extent you're just identify that we're running the equation all the time and that the equation doesn't work, that's it. I got a few more things to say, but that's it. And getting us to operate on the basis where we're running the equation in the opposite would be a bit of a miracle, because it would be operating in a radically different way than the culture around us operates. This was Tim Keller's commentary on this passage. He quotes an article from the New York Times Magazine. This is from 2007, called Happiness 101. He says it described positive psychology, a branch of psychology that seeks to take a scientific, empirical approach to what makes people happy. Researchers in this field have found that if you focus on doing and getting things that give you pleasure, it does not lead to happiness, but produces what one researcher has dubbed the hedonic treadmill. You become addicted to pleasure, and your need for the pleasure fix keeps growing. You have to do more and more. This is Dopamine Nation, like 10 or 15 years earlier. They're saying the same thing. You're never satisfied. You're never really happy. According to the article, scientific studies have shown the best way to increase your happiness is actually to do acts of selfless kindness, to pour yourself out for needy people. The main researcher's goal was to show that there are ways of living that research shows lead to better outcomes. Some of these better outcomes were close relationships and love, well-being, and meaning and purpose in life. The researcher pointed out that when you're leading an unselfish life of service to other people, it gives you a sense of meaning, of being useful and valuable, of having a life of significance. So naturally, he argued that you should live this way in order to achieve these better outcomes. In other words, he's saying live a selfless life because it will make you happy, not because you ought to or because it's moral to do so. In fact, the research said I never used the word mortality. Do you get the problem with that, though? He says, but you see, if I lead an unselfish life primarily to make myself happy, then I'm not leading an unselfish life. Like, that's the trap. You're running it through the equation, and it'll never work. I'm not doing these acts of kindness for others. I'm ultimately doing them for myself. We're then being encouraged to live unselfish lives for selfish reasons, which doesn't make sense. I thought about bad leadership is I win even if you have to lose for me to win. Good leadership is I win and you win. Jesus is saying, I will lose so you can win. I will lose. This is what the equation is going to look like. I will lose so you can win. And Jesus is saying, in my losing, I too will win, but you can't know that beforehand. It doesn't work in the equation. You can't run it through it. Does it mean you'll never win? Is it like those monks from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, just beating themselves, and this is the way we're supposed to live, and just never be happy? No. Back to Mark 8, calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life, you want to save your life? Lose it. And whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's is going to save it. You lose your life and you'll find it. You try and find your life, you're going to lose it. But it really is going to feel a bit like losing. It's not going to be in your control. You're not going to be able to see how it works. You're not going to be able to run it through an equation that makes sense to you. Peter asked a few weeks ago, the rich young ruler, where Jesus is like, give up everything and give to the poor and then come and follow me. And the guy walked away sad because he had a lot. The equation didn't work for him. And then Peter's like, well, what about us? We gave up everything for you. And Jesus says, yeah. It's like, you will get it. Like, there is a reward, even if you can't see it. And Peter can't see it. He's like, trust me, you are going to find life, real life. But your life can't be driven by that equation if you're going to follow Jesus into the kingdom of God. Like, what's in it for me? Is this the way to maximize my return? And there's power in just recognizing how pervasive, how automatic that is for us. We know that's true. We've all had experiences, missions trips. Man, people go on missions trips for like a week, and you give up everything. I'm going to sleep wherever you want me to sleep. I'm going to eat whatever you want me to eat. I'm going to dig trenches. I might ask people to do the most un-American thing ever and ask people to help me pay for it and just be the ultimate servant. And people come back from that week or two thinking that was the best week of my life because I gave up everything. And it's the equation that Jesus is advocating, like flip the whole thing around. The people over my time that I think get this the best are addicts, like people that have a chemical addiction, a sex addiction, like over time. Those are the people that get that you can't live by the equation, you have to flip it. Because whatever their addiction was, was just particularly destructive to their life, and they got to the brink of almost losing absolutely everything, and just saw it. And then they came back, and then they realized, and the guy that taught me this the most, some of you remember this name, is Scott Haith, who had been in rehab for heroin 6 times. But Scott was always willing to help anybody, like just held his time super loosely, because he knew, like, if he let himself be selfish, he was going to go right back there and it was going to destroy his life. There's almost a blessing because we're all addicted to something. We're all on some pleasure cycle, but some of them will ruin your life completely. And then you get the sense that this is absolutely true, and so the fear forces you to change your life. We should all have that fear, but we don't all get to see it. Children are an example. So, I always want to be careful with this because not everybody in here has children. Not everybody chose to have children. Not everybody can have children. And there's a lot of kids here. And over the years, people have told me, like, it's hard to be at this church with all these kids when you don't have kids, or even especially if you can't have kids. So I just want to recognize that that's difficult. But kids are one of those things where you put in so much, and it's not easy to see what you are going to get back. The equation on having children doesn't work because you can't quantify the payoff, and that's why birth rates globally are plummeting. I don't know how many of you are up on this. Like, birth rates are plummeting. Like, the population of the world is going to peak in, like, late 21st century. It's going to go down, and we're not going to be able to get it back. In countries where they're in a demographic death spiral, like China and Japan and Korea, like Korea I read this week, they're paying people tons of money to have kids, and they're not doing it because it just doesn't make sense. And people here aren't doing it because they cost like $250,000 to raise a kid to the age of 18. Good Lord. This is so much. And I don't even think that counts college. Like, it's a ton of money. And it's all your time. Like, you had time, you don't anymore because you have children instead. And all your energy, you know, you get kids and, like, you put them to bed at night and you just stare at something. This could be a TV or your tablet or your spouse. Just like, you've got a lot of kids. They're little. You went out last night, just stared at each other. That's it, because it's all you got, you know? Like, you give everything for them. They're not a good decision on paper. But, man, they're not. No, I'm dead serious about this. This is why people in our culture are having fewer and fewer kids, because they're not a good decision on paper. You and I were not good decisions on paper, right? This is why God's saying, be fruitful, multiply, and fill the earth makes more and more sense to me. But you have them. I remember when we had our first kid, I wasn't really thinking about it much, you know. But Glenn said, where's Glenn? Glenn was like, you won't, where did I miss him? There he is. Do you remember what you said to me? This is 23 years ago. He turned 23 this week. He said, you won't pay attention to this kid until he's like a year and a half old and he's like fun and can interact with you. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to told Bobby Joe, I'm not going to pay attention to him until he's 18 months old, you know. That kid was born, I could have stared at him 24/7. I was like, dude, what is this? This is amazing. Like, just something, just a thing, you know, and you will give everything for that kid. You will, and you won't expect anything in return. There's just something about it, and it's a blessing that you don't know what it is before you have them, because honestly, people would be just trying to have kids all the time, honestly, right? It just changes you if you're a parent, and so you'll sacrifice like nothing else. Keller did this, and when he did it, I remember there was a kid in Apex, and he'd been down in his late teenage years. He'd been down in Wilmington, got with a bad crowd, killed somebody. And his mom in the news was like, but he's really a great kid. We're like, he's not that great. Just kill the dude, you know? But as a parent, you like give and give and give, and so they're the best thing in the world because you love like that. You know, I heard someone say it's like your heart walks around outside your body for the rest of your life when you have a kid. Heard someone say, no parent is higher emotionally than their lowest child. Had a friend at our last church, they had 5 kids. He said, your heart gets bigger every time. You don't think you can love more, and then you have a kid, and then your heart has more capacity for love. And so kids are an example of what Jesus, like, you give and give and give, and then you get life. Like, you lose your life, and you save your life. Your spouse, it's different. It was Valentine's Day weekend, but it's different because you get married thinking you're going to get more out of it than you put into it. Because when you date, you keep dating with someone by definition because you don't got to put a lot into it. If you're dating someone, it's super hard, stop dating them, right? Like, this is not a good recipe if it's really hard. The equation is working. That's why we get married. Because we find somebody that it's like, man, that really love being around this person, and they make me feel good because they like me. And so it's working both ways. But when you get married, if the equation stops working in your favor, you feel like you're putting more in than they're putting in, or you're putting more in than you're getting out. That goes on for too long. What happens? You end up going to the counseling. Like, it's just not, that gets hard, and that's marriage. But the expectations are different. Now, if you get two people that are willing to flip the equation, if you get two people that are saying, you know what, I'm willing to lose so you win. I'm willing to lose so you win. Two people that do that, they will never stop winning. They will be the best marriage ever. Because that's how love works. I will give without expecting in return. That's love. Our art, our movies, that's love. When people sacrifice, I will give, but I don't need to get back. That moves us. That's love. I gave my life as a ransom for many. I lost so you could win. That's love. That's the gospel. And Jesus is saying this is how we're supposed to be living our lives. And if it's true, then we don't have to constantly run is this worth my investment of time, energy, money? Am I winning? Especially compared to how everybody else is winning. And there's a ton of freedom in that. I thought just this morning I was going through this. Being in ministry, you lose agency over your income. We don't get paid a bonus. I know, and a teacher, you'd be the same way. So you can't play that game, but you're free from the game of am I making enough? Because you can't play it. You know what I mean? There's freedom because you check yourself out. And Jesus is asking us to check ourselves out. And focus on, find the person in the room that needs the most love and love them, and then just let go of the rest. My biggest problem over the last few weeks trying to figure out what to do with this sermon is that I realized I'm trying to convince you to do this thing as Jesus is telling you to do, to motivate you to live the way Jesus is saying, but I'm trying to do it by showing you how it's good for you. Someone got that. I'm trying to get you to not do this equation by doing this equation. Does you get it? And it just doesn't work. It comes down to trusting that Jesus knows what he's talking about and letting him lead you to the places where he is. Because when we do that, we're okay, this looks like losing to me. I don't see the winning, but this is where Jesus called me to go. That's where we'll find Jesus. You bored in your relationship with Jesus? This might be part of it. Because Jesus is working the equation backwards. And that's what love is. And my best advice could be go ahead and run the equation. If you find out that the numbers don't work in your favor, you're going to give more than you're going to get in this situation, you're probably in the right place. And let go of it and come back to it a few days or weeks or months later and see if Jesus wasn't right. Because he's going to be, because he's Jesus. I'm going to finish this with a quote. The band can come back up. It's a quote from a musician a guy named Rich Mullins. He passed years ago, but man, he's just and he was weird. He was a weird guy. He lived on an Indian reservation and helped kids learn music, and they taught him how to make mud huts. He went to the Dove Awards. You know what the Dove Awards are? They're like the Christian Grammys. And he thought the whole thing was so pretentious that he went into the kitchen, got on a thing, and started serving food to people. He's this is so dumb. He was just a weird guy. I don't know that people really liked him. But his music was great, and I liked him, and he said some profound things that 20, 30 years later have stuck to me. And this is one of them. He said, I hope I would leave a legacy of joy, a legacy of real compassion, because I think there's a great joy in real compassion. I don't think you can know joy apart from caring deeply about people, caring enough about people that you actually do something. But I have a feeling if my life is motivated by my ambition to leave a legacy, what I will probably leave as a legacy is ambition. I have a feeling if my life is motivated by my ambition to leave a legacy, what I'll probably leave as a legacy is ambition. I feel like that is the world, the air we breathe. But if my life is motivated by the power of the Spirit in me, if I live with the awareness of the indwelling Christ, if I follow his presence to guide my actions, to guide my motives, those sorts of things, that's the only time when I think we really leave a great legacy. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. My ambition to be a good guy is a fleshly ambition. When Christ calls us to take up our cross and follow him, a lot of us think that what that means is we're supposed to lay down our vices and cling to our virtues. But I think that unless Christ is the Lord of our virtues become just as dangerous to us and to the people around us as our vices. I think that when Christ calls us to take up our cross, what he means is that you must die not only to whatever vices are in your life, which he will eventually kill out, but you'll also die to whatever virtues are in your life. Your life is not valuable because you're an articulate speaker. Your life is not valuable because you're a generous person. Your life is not valuable because of any of that. If we empty ourselves of everything and allow God to be present, and it's no longer us, it's him, then it becomes a spiritual thing, and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. That's when I think Christianity really begins to make sense. Father, thanks for this scene, and I don't know. I wonder if James and John don't take it on the chin over and over again every time this sermon is preached, but they take it, Lord, and that you show us our own hearts in it, that you show me my own heart, and I pray you reveal to us in whatever way we need it to be revealed, the ways that this has got us, and give us a glimpse of how it's killing us, and help us to trust you in the way of the kingdom and in a better way, Lord, and that we would have a culture as a church of being able to engage things that look like they're not a great investment of our time, money, and energy, but because you've said they are, and we trust you, and we really learn what it is to love. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.